did you come to be involved in it?
Thank you, Jody. It's a pleasure to be here and share my life passion and my story with you and all the women that you support and work with. Lovescaping is the work of my life. It's my philosophy of life, my legacy. I am from Venezuela originally, but I left 15 years ago. And in those 15 years, I have been living in different parts of the world, in Africa, Asia, Europe, Central America, and now in North America. And all of those life experiences, living with people from very different backgrounds, different cultures, different histories, religions, you name it, taught me that love transcends all differences and that love is what unites us human beings. But when I started looking closer at what is love and how do we cultivate love, like what does love look like? So it's been a process for me of putting all those life experiences, working in education, community development, across opposite corners of the world. What makes love possible? What are the ingredients that made us become one family? That made us become one despite our differences. And that's how what I call the 15 pillars revealed themselves. So lovescaping is practicing love in action through the intentional engagement of 15 pillars. These are all universal values, pillars like empathy, compassion, respect, trust. But if you really think about it, love is not a single entity. You can't have love without trust, right? You can't have love without respect, without vulnerability, without empathy, without compassion. So it dawned on me that we can all agree that love is the answer, and it's what makes us human. But where do we learn to love, Jody? Just consider this question. Where do we learn to love? Those of us who learn to love at home, like I did, are very privileged, but not everybody has a loving home. And not every home is equipped with the tools to teach their children how to love, because maybe they never loved. So I think it's so important to define love and to teach it in a very intentional way. And so my program, Lovescaping Inc., what I do is I teach human beings how to love. And I'm doing that by having programs in schools, in public schools. I've developed a curriculum based on teaching each one of these pillars to students of all ages. I also work with adults. And the idea is that we go from knowing what these words mean to actually embodying them, right? Like, how am I empathetic? How am I humble? How am I solidary? How am I grateful? And so my dream is a world filled with lovescapers, where every student, every child, the minute they enter school, they have lovescaping class, where they learn to love and they learn to practice love in action, developing self-love and love for others. So that is my big mission.
Sometimes love can mean different things in different families. Hearing is that you are redefining what children and even adults have grown up.
Obviously, that's why I think the best place to start this work is schools. Schools are our second home. And for many children, they are the only place where they are safe, right? Where they receive a different kind of approach to, life that maybe what they see at home or in their environment. So as adults, it's so much harder to unlearn, right? Because we are set in our ways, Jody, but nothing is impossible. And there has to be the will. We all have the ability to learn and unlearn and relearn and, grow any time in our lives, but we have to want to do it, right? And I think especially right now during this time that we are kind of looking inward and being very introspective with, the pandemic happening, it's really an ideal time to reflect. And that's one of my favorite words, because it means looking back and taking an intentional pause to really think about your life and to reflect about what you have lived, where you see yourself going in the future. And so again, I have seen the remarkable transformation that human beings undergo when they're loved. It doesn't matter their age. Every human being wants and needs to be loved. Every human being wants to matter. Every human being wants to be seen and heard. And so that is why that is why I have this very strong conviction that we can learn to love, and that love is a virtuous cycle. Because if you are somebody who maybe doesn't have a lot of self-love and had a very hard time growing up, my act of loving you heals you and instills that sense of self-love in you, which will then allow you to love somebody else. So this is how we create the virtuous cycle of love. And adults, when they experience that, they are transformed. I mean, it's like the inevitable consequence of loving, for human beings to be transformed and to heal, and then they go on and become, lovescapers in turn.
Because what I do is change, whether it's forced upon us or not. And what I'm hearing is that that's what you deal with. And you deal with people willing to learn how to be daring enough to love themselves. Because I think it takes courage to stop and pause.
Absolutely. I mean, I 100% agree with you. And also, choosing love is choosing the hardest road, Jody, because if you think about it, that is another one of the paradigms I want to change. Love is hard work. Love is not this fluff, right? If you really consider this, it's much easier to use fear, right? If you're a teacher, if you're a parent, if you're in a position of power, to use fear to manipulate and control people, to threaten, right? It is much harder to be empathetic and patient and compassionate, right? And so that is the challenge that we have ahead of us, that we really need to know that we all have the ability to learn, but we're making the decision that it's the hardest choice, but it's the most worthwhile choice, because love is what makes us human. But it's not easy. It's simple, but it's not easy. They're very different things.
Yes, I remember the Dalai Lama was quoted as saying, what about all these people? They're all your enemies. Heart more. They are a lesson for me to open my heart to love more. And
Exactly.
that's what I'm hearing. And it is challenging. Do you find that people might take things very personally, which might affect how they love either themselves or others, assuming expectations, something like in that? How does that fit into lovescaping?
Absolutely. I mean, you've mentioned a lot of the concepts that I deal with in class, even when we're learning about assumptions. Like, one of my favorite images that I almost always start my classes with is the image of an iceberg. We are all icebergs. What we see is the tip. I see you, you see me, I see your face, your body, your physical appearance, but I don't know what's inside.
If you have come here to help me, you are wasting your time. But if you've come because your liberation is bound up with mine, then let us work together, by Lilla Watson. How does that resonate with you?
It's one of my favorite quotes, and it just so beautifully captures this idea of solidarity and interconnectedness. So one of the concepts that has informed my worldview and lovescaping is Ubuntu. Ubuntu is a concept or a philosophy from the Southern Bantu language that means I am because you are. I am because we are. So think about that, Jody. There's no I without you, no I without we. It is the opposite of individualism. And so this is what this quote so beautifully and just eloquently captures, that it's not this power dynamic, this hierarchy of like, I'm coming to help you because you're weak and I'm strong and I'm colonial or whatever it is, right? Like, it is, I am human, you're human, and because we're human, we're in this together. And until we need to all be loved, right? We all need to lift each other up. And until not everybody's lifted up and until not everybody's being loved, we have work to do, because our liberation is bound to each other. So we are all interconnected, interdependent. And to me, that is a shift that we have to take to move forward with our society. If we just focus on myself and my needs and what's good for me in a selfish manner, that we're going to end up becoming extinct, really. And so it just holds this idea for me that every human being in the planet we are connected, and every human being matters, and we need to do better, because it's a matter of liberation, and the act of loving is an act of liberation too. So we have to lift everybody up. And so that's why I love that quote so much.
Beautiful. And you know, we are one uni, you and I, verse.
It's such a pleasure to speak with you and share with you and listen to your thoughts. And, you know, thank you so much for this wonderful opportunity.
Thank you so very much.